Welcome to hashtag Women Your Power. It is such a pleasure to have you in this power session. And, I really appreciate your time. I'm going to jump into question one, if you don't mind, and ask you, what do you perceive power to be as a woman?
First of all, I just want to say thank you for having me. This is really important, and I'm really honored to be here. So thank you, everyone. In terms of how I think about power and as it relates to being a woman, I'm honest, right? I'm unapologetically Black. I'm unapologetically a woman. So when I think about power, I think about it really very much from the perspective of being a Black woman. And I think about how throughout history, Black women have overcome so many obstacles and still have come out on top. And people see that, right? They ask you to come in and clean up the mess or be the leader when things are hectic. But they may not want to pay you. And then when you've gotten things cleaned up, then they're ready to do a change in leadership and then give someone else sort of the credit. So it's an interesting thing where we know that we have this inner strength that allows us to overcome so many obstacles and really show our light, our intelligence, and our strength. Simultaneously, people constantly don't want to give us the credit. So we have to be bold, very bold about saying, I'm going to take my power, right? And I think that that's really important. Inherently, your power is within. And I think from generation to generation, if you think about the fact that, Black women used to be slaves and had to give up their children, think about all that pain that they had to go through and still were able to live, survive, and survive well. And that has just trickled down generation after generation. So I think that as a people, Black women are extremely powerful beings. And we just have to tap into that and own it, not be afraid of our power.
And I love that, and own it, right? Because that is essentially it. It's about realizing it, recognizing it, and then owning it. And that brings me to question two for the session, which is, how have you realized that fortified power in your own
life? For me, it was really foundational. My parents were extremely intentional about creating a foundation where I felt safe to be who I was, that I knew who I was, right? So I grew up in white neighborhoods and I went to private schools, so predominantly white schools, but in my home were Black dolls, Black books, exalting Black people, right? So I always knew that I came from a powerful background, and most importantly, I had a safe space and a safe foundation to go back to. So if I wanted to be bold in who I was in the world, which can be difficult, right? Some people don't like that. Some people want you to conform. Some people want you to assimilate, and they will do different things to break down your spirit. But if you have somewhere you can go home and really recharge your spirit, I think it's so important that if we're raising Black children right now, all Black parents should absolutely be exalting the foundation for their children and saying, no, you guys are beautiful. You come from a beautiful heritage. And that's something that my parents did extremely well. On top of that, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents too, right? My grandmother in Harlem, New York City, and my other grandmother in New Orleans, Louisiana. And that was also just a lot of love, having that extended family. So in lots of ways, I was raised by a village. Yes, my parents were the foundation, but I knew my family and I felt loved and coveted in all those ways. That has really allowed me to grow and be the person that I am today.
And that is so important, that foundational sort of establishment of who you are, of your heritage, because those are things that you absolutely cannot change, whether you wanted to or not. And I applaud your parents also for doing that in a system, because I think it's so unique as well to the USA, in a system that doesn't necessarily recognize Black or see Black or love Black. And that is you guys' experience as a minority group within your country, which is a completely different experience to what we experience as Black women in Africa, right? And I applaud your parents for having the confidence to raise you in an environment that had self-love and that had self-worth. And I think that is really key, and that's important. And that brings us to our last question for the day, which is, how are you able to share that realized power with the world?
Yeah, I think it's so important to create community. So I go around and really try to think of different ways where I can elevate sisterhood. There's this, I would say, there's a perception that women can't be friends with each other. We're kind of be competitive with one another. There's that perception also within the Black community, period, that Black people in general can't be work with one another or in constant competition. And I want to change that entire narrative. And the ways that I do that is I try different ways to do community. So in the different cities that I've lived in, I'm always doing Black Girl Happy Hour, Black Girl Magic Happy Hour. I've done it live in different cities. I've done it virtually because I have the ability to travel so much and meet so many different people. And then, of course, I have this virtual series, I'm a Black Woman, Yes, I Matter. But it's all about creating community to me. And then we can all learn and grow and not be competitive, but support, right? Yeah. Support and love and be positive beings for one another. And I think that's the most important thing. As I was saying, I think previously, I follow a podcast and there's like a psychiatrist who specializes in helping people recover from any drug addictions particularly, but any kind of addiction. And one of the things that he says is, yes, of course, therapy is important. If we need to be on medication, that's important. But the most important thing for any addict to recover is community. If you have community that can love you and you have these relationships and you're relationship bonding, that's what allows you to be who you are, to be a positive being in the world. And so that's what I try to do, is create positive communities as much as possible.
And that's exactly how I know you. That's how I've come to know you. And I think that's why we resonated so well, so quickly as well on LinkedIn, because that's how we met, is that you just had this energy about you that said, you know, hey, woman, are you okay? Like, hey, woman, do you need support? And I think that resonates so beautifully. And I want to thank you for doing that, for sharing that light and sharing that power so gracefully and so boldly with the rest of us. And I think that's also what I was trying to create with hashtag Women Your Power, was a sense of community, to say, I don't care your ethnic background, your education, your economic standing. I don't care, you know, where you live in the world. But as women, I think we need to create more of a community and more of a support structure so that we can see and understand that we actually had to lift each other up instead of competing, instead of that narrative that everybody else seems to put on us as if we don't have enough on our shoulders. But we really shouldn't be in a space of competing, more of necessarily, or rather loving one another and encouraging one another and supporting each other. So I thank you for making that your purpose and moving in that and being intentional about that as well. The very last thing I have to say in this session, Kwamara, is, woman, you are power.
You are too. Yeah. Thank you so much.